South Korea has become one of the countries many people look up to, mainly because of cultural exports like K-pop, K-dramas, and the global reach of major corporations like Samsung, Hyundai, and LG. On the surface, it seems like the perfect model of a country that went from underdeveloped to a developing one in a few decades. However, beneath all the fast-paced success is a harsh reality impacting the very group that built South Korea. The collapse of South Korea's middle class isn't dramatic or headline-grabbing, and it certainly hasn't been sudden. It's instead a subtle change that's creeping into daily life through quiet compromises and mounting pressures. The story of South Korea has quickly become more than just about economic growth and success. It's now defined by the deteriorating standard of living and human development in its middle class. At first glance, South Korea looks like a middle-class success story: high-rise apartments, top-tier schools, and a thriving consumer culture. But inside its modern cities is the devastating reality of high household debt. It's no secret that South Korea is one of the most expensive places to live in, but for its middle class, the expenses are piling up. According to research, the total household debt in South Korea reached a staggering 1.927 trillion won as of 2024, equivalent to approximately 1.34 trillion US dollars. The debt to GDP ratio now hovers around 90%, one of the highest among developed nations. But it isn't reckless spending that's putting the South Korean middle class in such dire straits. It's actually the social pressure to keep up with the standard of living that has, quite frankly, become increasingly impossible to achieve. Korean households take out loans to help give their children the best education, invest in small businesses or schemes to earn money, and to pay the down payments for their houses or apartments. Loan culture has become common for the average South Korean, as many small banks and organizations have started to cater to this need and profit off their desperation through high markups. Yet, even with societal pressures and immediate expenses, most South Korean families are one termination or medical complication away from facing bankruptcy. For some, even loan repayment is difficult as interest rates tend to fluctuate, and people rarely come up with the money in time. Although the Bank of Korea has recently recognized this problem by tightening borrowing rules and drafting policies to cut interest rates, for some families the help might arrive too late. One of the main reasons for the country's increasing household debt is the policies surrounding South Korea's real estate culture. Skyrocketing real estate prices, particularly in Seoul, have made homeownership a fading dream for the majority of the middle class. And the chonse system, which was once seen as a practical solution to constant payments, is now exacerbating the population's debt crisis. The chonse system requires tenants to pay a lump sum deposit ranging from 60% to 80% of the property's value, and in return, they get to live rent-free for 2 years. For a first-time homeowner or someone struggling with a threat of homelessness, this seems like a security blanket for 2 years. To them, the rent-free 2 years can be used for consistent payments later, but that is rarely possible. Many families cannot afford this deposit to begin with. As a consequence, more and more families go for loans to make these payments. The Bank of Korea recently flagged the escalating home prices as a systemic financial risk, and has urged the government to intervene and reconsider interest rate cuts. Unfortunately, what the government fears is already a reality for most middle-class families. The social reality has led to the birth of the dirt spoon generation, who identify as a hopeless generation that can only dream of owning their own home, but have no faith in it ever becoming a reality. The youth in this generation tend to stay home and are extremely frugal, often limiting even social experiences to save money for rent. After housing, the biggest expense in a South Korean household is education. This is a country where ambition is expected of children, especially high schoolers looking to get into college. South Korea has a toxic culture of competitive exams and expensive higher education that isn't accessible to everyone. To keep up with the pressure of getting the best grades, many middle-class families often invest in hagwons, or tuition. These can start as early as elementary school and last up to the college entrance exams. Once individuals get into the few elite Korean universities, high tuition fees and low scholarship rates make the struggle worse. There are also hidden costs associated with education. such as those for extracurriculars, high merit electives, and community service, all of which are needed to make a college application shine. Education, a tool used to lift the middle class out of poverty and towards a better lifestyle, is a debt trap in Korea. With many of the best institutions becoming privatized, quality education is getting further out of reach every day. Another pressure on the South Korean middle class is finding a respectable and well-paying job. Most students are trained from the start on how to get into famous companies such as Samsung and Hyundai. In South Korea, earning money isn't enough. Your job title and the company you work for determine your importance and respect in society. And that means everyone's competing for a limited number of jobs, while the rest settle for unrewarding jobs or irregular contract work. Many end up slaving away at non-contract jobs that offer nothing more than letting them get through the day. A study conducted last year showed that 38.2% of all wage earners in the country are made up of non-regular contract workers. This has been the biggest change between contract and non-contract employees in over 20 years. These non-contract jobs are subpar at best, often consisting of temporary work that has no job security or benefits. Those who find themselves in the handful of stable job sectors are working long hours without many benefits. Career planning is proving to be useless, as many South Koreans tend to take up work that's available as opposed to work they are interested in. Despite the image of a bustling, innovative economy, South Korea's labor force is an increasingly fractured one that's brimming with instability. In the race for growth, job security has become yet another casualty, and the middle class is once again stuck paying the price. The life path that many adults took of getting a good education and working hard to eventually afford a house and a family is no longer feasible for the youth. To some, the goals of owning their own home or putting their children through college seem to be far out of reach. A 2022 study of the Korean Development Institute found that only 20 to 30% of South Koreans believe their children will be able to achieve a higher economic status than their own. In the long run, such hopelessness is hurting South Korea's middle class. Their motivations to work are slowly being stripped from them, leaving behind a hollow society on the verge of an economic crisis. This issue is the product of South Korea's economic and political laws that make long-term prosperity difficult for the everyday man. For example, many people believe that if they work in a good company for many years, they will be promoted and can move towards an easy retirement. Yet, the biggest obstacle in doing so is the mandatory military service for men. Most people prefer to finish their military service as soon as they're done with high school or university. Yet, the gap causes them to fall behind when applying for jobs and trying to catch up with the competition. Those who put off military service for later realize that once they've become comfortable with their job post, they are now required to serve time. Most workplaces do not keep their position open for them on their return, and even though the military service is paid, it is much lower than the minimum wage in the country. When every aspect of life seems to be holding you back from moving towards the upper class, a population eventually stops trying. All of the social pressures that we discussed are bringing about a social change in South Korea that has the potential to cripple the country as a whole. From a lack of faith in education to rising trends of job insecurity, the middle class is coping with it in the only ways left. Many South Koreans feel that having children is an unnecessary burden when they cannot afford quality schooling and living conditions for them. This has caused the birth rate in Korea to drop to a staggering 0.72%, the lowest in the entire world in just a few decades. Due to a lack of youth in the country, South Korea is bound to face a labor shortage in the near future. A growing number of South Koreans are choosing to live alone or cohabitate without legal marriage, forming what the media has dubbed the Sampo generation. As seen from countries all over the world, a healthy and prosperous middle class is required to drive economic growth. Without it, South Korea's large companies might lose their global standing, causing the upper class to stratify and create a new social system. Do you think South Korea has strayed too far from a sustainable society? Be sure to let us know what you think in the comments below.